Hi and welcome back to the channel Building Amazing Things. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create this art website design. It's a really interesting and amazing website which I'm going to show you how to create, and it's really creative, and I'm going to show you some techniques which I used in creating this website. One of the techniques is getting colors from images. This is one of the basic techniques, one of the major techniques UI designers use in getting colors for the UI design projects. I know mixing colors and getting colors are really difficult, and colors gives a perception to your UI designs. So in this video I'm going to be walking you through how to actually get nice colors from images and use them. And also this technique works when the client doesn't have a unique color for their project and no branding which has been done for the project. So you can use this technique to get colors for UI design projects. So I'm going to be showing you guys how I got images and how I decided to select colors from how I decided to select some particular images, and how I decided to choose color, how I selected colors from those images. So guys, make sure you relax, take a coffee and take a drink, whatever you want to take, so you relax and watch this video to the end. Make sure you watch the video to the end. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and if you're new to this channel, remember to subscribe to this channel. The button is either down here or down here in this video. Remember to subscribe, remember to like, remember to share my videos to people who are really interested in UI designs. So without wasting much of the time, guys, let's dive into the video. So right here on my Figma design, I have some images. I'm going to talk about how I selected these images. Then I have my artboard, which is MacBook Pro. You see as MacBook Pro. So pretty simple, image 1 to 3, nothing done on this design yet. You can see the artboard, and you can see the title of the project, which is artboard design, and the card, the frame, which is also artboard design. So how did I select these images? What I did was to get some handful of images from free platforms where I can get free images to use, so that I don't have any copyright infringement for using someone's image. So I went to unsplash.com and I looked for some kind of art related images, since the project is an art website image. So when I looked at these art related images, I then selected a handful of them and shared with the owner of the project and asked if they are really interested in some of these images. So I allowed the owner of the project to select some particular images which they are interested in. And at the end of the day, I got this couple of images which the owner of the project is really interested in. So having done that, I can now derive, because the owner of the project doesn't have a specific branding or color for their project, so I can easily select colors from these images which I have already here in this design. So what I can do now is to click on the artboard and start implementing some UI design techniques. So one of them is to add a grid system that will help me to align content on my artboard very efficient, and makes all the components or layers on the artboard to really look very interesting. So the first grid I'm going to add, if you want to add a layer grid, just click on the layer grid here and click on the plus, and it adds some grid system. So if I click here and I'm going to select this to be columns, and I'll make this 12 columns, and I'll make this stretch. And now you can decide what margin you want to use for your design. So I'm going to make this 100 margin, and then the gutter I'm going to make this 24. This is like a basic for me. The margin, it's all depends to you what you want to use for the margin, and this is what you share to your developer. You share your grid system to the developer and tell your developer, your front-end developer, that these are the grid system I used for this project. So when the developer is using CSS to actually design this, the developer will know what exact grid system to use for the design. So another grid system which I'm going to add is the row grid system. So I'm going to select this to be row, and I'm going to make this to be 300. So you can set any amount of row columns rows you want, sorry. And I'm going to make this to start from the top and the height should be 8, and because I'm using the 8-point grid system for this design, and I'm going to make the gutter to be 0. So one thing you will have to do, I mentioned this in several videos, and make sure you watch my UI design video. I talked about some of this. I talked about fonts, typography, I talked about the grid system, white spacing, and a lot in that video. The link is here, just check it out. It's either here or here. Check it out. If you have not watched that video, make sure you watch that video before you watch this very video. So one thing I need to be sure of is setting my nudge. So I get to my Figma icon here and go to preferences and go to nudge and set the smaller nudge to be 1 and the bigger nudge to be 8. The essence of setting this is because I'm using the 8-point grid system. If you're using the 16-point grid system, go ahead to set the big nudge to be 16. And if you're using the 32, go ahead to set it to be 32. So some of these, I've mentioned that in the previous video. So I'm not going to go too details into it. This is like a basics for most UI designers. So I'm going to turn off the grid system by clicking on the eye icon here and then turn off the grid system. So the next thing I want to do is the color. What colors I want to use for this. There's a rule called 60-30-10 rule. So the 60-30-10 rule, the next video that is coming up, I'm going to be talking about the 60-30-10 rule, where I talk about colors and how to choose colors, what colors means to different people, different society, what the color way is all about. I've been working so hard on that video, and that video will be coming out hopefully next week. I'm going to give you my best to come out next week. So let's quickly go ahead and start our design. So what I want to do now is to select some basic colors. So I can choose this design to be like a base for my colors. And what I can do is I need a background color. So that is the basic 60% rule of the color, 60-30-10 rule. So your 60% should be more of your background colors, the base color. Then the 30 should be your primary color, while the 10 should be your accents or your secondary color, which you can use for call to actions. So and the basic color I want to use here for this design. So what I can do is to pick the pick tool for the color and then play around to see what color I want to use for this. So I think this color, I want to use this as the base color for this design. So what I can do is I use the lighter version of this. Make sure you select this to HSL and make this to be either 98, and you have something like this. Let's say 96. Let's see what 96 have. You have something like this. I think I should use 98 for this. This is kind of my base color and serves like my white or something like that. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to select an eclipse and make sure I have that color here. So next time I want to use them, I can use the color. So I'm going to duplicate this and also select a black color for my design. Usually this should be for my text. And I'm selecting these colors from the images. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add some content to this design and fast as I can, so I don't waste much of your time. So I talked about typography in the previous video. Typography helps you typescale. Typography helps you to really have consistency in level of hierarchy when it comes to your typography. So I'm using the major third because I want my text to be large a little bit. In the previous video I used the minor third, so yeah, I want it to be a little bit larger. And so I'm going to set this to be I'm using the 20 pixel for the navigations. So what I'm going to do is select the text and I'm going to set that to be 20 pixel, and I'm going to use Montserrat. And in case you're wondering how I got my typeface, I got them from Google Fonts. So just go to fonts.google.com and I'll just go ahead and type what you want to type and look at how it turned out to look like, and then you select one that's more appropriate for your UI design. So I'm not going to be talking about that. I did that in the previous video where I talked about UI design crash course. If you've not watched that video, make sure you do that immediately. So I'm going to set this to home, and properties, I'm going to set this to semi-bold and 20. That's fine. And I have home, and the color, I'm not going to use the pure black. I'm going to use the black from the image. So what I can do now is to duplicate this, and another thing we want to have is about the art store, and you want to see galleries, and you want to see contact. Sorry about that. I have to duplicate it. I use Ctrl D to duplicate. You see contact. So I'm going to select all of these and add auto layout to rate. So just use a Shift A and you add auto layout. So I'm going to set the spacings within them to be 32. Another thing I want to add is I can duplicate this with Ctrl D, and I'll say this to be sharp. I hope you're following. So one thing I want to do is go to pages. So this page, I'm going to call this page main design, and I'm going to add another page where I will say this page is the components. So components like buttons, header, nav, whatever components you want to add, you can do that here. So what you can do now, I can add a frame on this component, and I'll set this frame MacBook Pro as well. So this frame, I'm going to rename this frame to be buttons because this is my button component. So you can have your typography, headers, colors, whatever you set in it. You can set your components here. I'm going to lift the text from the main design. I'm going to lift this shop, come here and paste it. So I actually want the shop to be more larger than normal fonts. So what I can do is to go to the type scale and select the next hierarchy. And this is 25. So I'm going to set this to 25 pixel, and add auto layout, Shift A. Remember to use the Shift A to add the auto layout. So I'm set this at the center, the auto layout properties center. And what next? I can then set this to be let's say 32, height 32, and this should be 56, and this should be at 1256. I think we'll go with this. And the color for this button, I can go ahead here and duplicate this. So my accent color, using the 60 30 20 10 row, my accent color, I want to use this red. So I'm going to pick the color here and go back to my components and change the background color, which is the fill, and put that color to be red. For the text color of that, I'm going to select the white and go to the components as well, and change the color of the black to be white, and we'll have this. So I want to add font icon, so you can see feather icons. I want to add some icons to this. So I'm going to click on feather icons and see what feather icons has for us. So shop, I'm going to look for something like a cat, select that, and I'll click on constraint proportions so that both sides will increase. Make this 32 and change the color to white. So I think I have the other color for white which I've copied, and I use my command X to cut it off and paste it inside here. So I have the icon and I have the text. I can select both of them and use Shift A on it, and I can set a spacing between them to be 16. So I think I have a button which I want to use, and what I can do next is go back, set this to be a component. So make it a component. Fine, it's now a component. So I'm going to call this button. Good. I'm going to call this button. Let's go back to our design, which is our main design. So yeah, right here, I can go to assets and go to buttons because we've added that, and I'll drag that into this frame. So I'm going to delete the shop, and I'll set this, the auto layout to be centered, and we'll have something like this. So I can zoom in. First of all, turn on the grid line and set this to match with the grid line. I may want this to take two columns. So I could increase it again and see if I take 2 columns. So it's now becoming more bigger. Yeah. So just make sure it takes 2 columns. So that's the essence of the grid line. It helps you to arrange things really awesome. Great. So I'm going to remove the grid line so I can arrange this very well. I'm going to remove the auto layout so I'll be sure that I arrange this properly. And then let me check out this. Okay, fine. And right click on group and select back and add auto layer, Shift A, and set this to be centered. So I'm going to make sure this goes to the center, and that's fine. So having done this, this is interesting. So this is one of the content of this design. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add some text. So I'm going to select the text. The first text should be the expression. I'm trying to see what art is all about. The expression. Then I'm going to duplicate this and say this should be human skills, right? So art is actually the expression of human skills. So guys, what I can do now is what kind of fonts do I want to use? I use Google Font to really help me choose good fonts. So for this font, I want to use it's called Swiss One. So a lot of you guys are asking me what font did I use for this design. So I don't actually have all the fonts on my head. So what I do is to go to Google Font, and I skim the different fonts here by typing actually what I want to skim for, and I skim and I get beautiful fonts which I can use here. So for the size, I'm going to set this to 76.29. Awesome. And I think that's relative. Okay, so I'm going to add some letter spacings of 11%, and I'm going to change this to uppercase. No, uppercase. And I think this is okay to what I want. So another thing I can do is to add a stroke to it. I can just click on the stroke. Let's not talk about the colors, but let's go ahead and click on the stroke. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the fill again. So I'm going to click on the stroke, and stroke should be black. Definitely, it should be black. Let's try black. And I'm going to make it 2.5, so it becomes more thicker. Then what next? I'm going to change the fill color. I'm going to select this as a fill color. What I can do is to reduce the opacity of the fill color, so I can make this to be 30. I'm reducing the opacity, and 30 I have something like this. A lot of you guys have asked me, how did I get that font? So this is some of the techniques I used in getting, try to be creative with my designs. So I can reduce the opacity of the font, of the border by holding my shift and the arrow up to reduce the thickness of the color. Fine. The next font, the next typeface which I'm going to be working on is the expression. I want this expression to be a little bit different, so I'm using the Satisfy. Sure about that. And for the font size, remember I'm using type scale to use good, and for the color I'm going to use the black. And for that of the off, I want it to be a little bit different, so I'm going to use size of 61.04, and I'm going to same use the typeface with the satisfy. What I can do is to add some letter spacing. You can set the letter spacing to be 0.5, and we're not talking about alignment yet, so I'm using a different color for this, so I can, from the images as well, try to choose some different colors. So I'm using that color, and I'll make this 0 uppercase. Yeah, let me make this uppercase and set this. Awesome. So I'm going to give some space, and I think I'm done with this. So the next thing is some learn text, and what I can do is to select my text and maybe have something like this, and I go to my this should be my basic text, or you can make it 20, and I'll set this to be 20, and letter spacings to be 0.5. Let's check the letter spacing for this as well. It's fine. What happened? So let's do that again. 0.5, and this should be 20, and I'm going to set this to paper and paste. So I'm going to use a plugin called Lauren Option. So I'm going to select the plugin, and I'll say auto generate. So I want this to generate just 3 lines of text. So I'm going to delete others and just have this. Fine. For the color, I'm going to select this color as well, the black, and I want it not to compete with what we have here. So what I can do is to reduce this by using the shift and the up arrow, and I reduce. Also, I've reduced this, and let's check the line height. So I'm using 32 for the line height. Awesome. If you have this design already, so the next thing I want to do is so I'm going to turn on the grid line, and let's see what we have. So for the images, so I'm going to bring in the images. So bring in this, and I want this to take 3. And for the height, let's say we're going to give the height 528. Sorry about that. We'll give the height, let's see what we can get. 528. Okay, then I'm going to take this to take two portion of the row, and I'm going to set this. Let me see. I'm going to set this to 280. So that also applies to this. I'm going to bring this in and set it to 280. So I'm going to set this way, and turn off the grid lines. Awesome. So we have something like this already. So I've not done proper alignment, so I'm going to show you guys how to do that when it's time for alignment. I don't want this video to be long, so I can go back to my assets and select the button and bring the button in here. So this time it's still shop. Figma is giving you some tips how to search for components. That's awesome. So I'm going to turn on the grid lines, and for the column grid line, so I'm start from here, and I want this to take 2. I think the size is too much, 96. So I can use the row to guide me on even sizes. So I'm going to bring this to snap to the row, and I think I'll reduce this to this, and I have 80. I still reduce it to 72. I think that's okay. So let's do that for this. So snap it to the row. You say snap to the row, and I'm going to reduce it. Sorry, select that. Make sure I snap it to 80 in 72. Okay, that's the essence of the grid row. So I'm going to turn off this to, and awesome, we're having some great designs. So I'm going to copy what I have here, and I'll paste it here, and this should be the name of our website, which is the artboard. So what size are we going to use for that? I'm going to use 31.25. Sorry about that. And letter spacing should be like 0.5. That's awesome. And kind of logo. So if you have a logo design already, you can use the logo design. So, but I'm trying to just pick the logos that's, maybe you could just go with this, and I'll click on the constraint proportion and set this to be 32, and I'll go back to my layouts. This is it. So I use my Command X and Command V, kind of paste it in this artboard. So select this both and use my Shift 8, which is the auto layout, and set this spacing like say 32 or even 24. And set this to be centered align. So you can see how messy it looks. We're going to tidy it up with the column grids. So one other thing I want to do is try to be more creative, and what I can do is turn off the grid line, the row grid line, and I'm going to take kind of column, a rectangle, and then set something like this. Let me snap it to the end and also to this point. I think that's fine. Or we can increase that a little bit. Just check it down this point. So I'm trying to be more creative with this, and what I can do now is to turn off the grid line and increase this to the end. So I can turn on the row grid line again and try to snap it to the top as well. I'll just snap it again, and I think this is fine. So the next thing I want to do, the design is looking awesome because we're just selecting colors from images, and it's really looking very great already. So I'll quickly set up, arrange this to snap to the grid line. Let me just quickly do that. So guys, what do you think about this grid line system? How best do you think should use that? Let me know in the comment section. So I'll quickly snap this. So guys, I'm just doing that as fast as I can so that I don't waste your time watching this video. I hope you learned something from this video. Let me know in the comment section. So one thing you can do is to use your ruler and then help you also snap things very well. So I'm trying to say, okay, I'm snapping this at this point. Shall I snap this point? Good, awesome. So let me snap this also at a point. We'll go ahead and delete the ruler, and I have something also great. So I can do that for this. Make sure everything snaps to the column. So this gives you a top-notch design rather than just arranging things anyhow you like on your design. So professionals want to check out this and see how you go about your designs. So I'm going to snap this very well. Snap very well. So to the top. So fine. Then I'm going to snap this as well. So it snaps to the column. And this also snaps to the column. Awesome. So I can move this to the top a little bit. And have this move a little bit. So guys, I quickly arranged my contents. So using the grid system. So what do you think after using the grid system? It's looking more interesting, right? So let me just turn off the grid system. Turned off. And what color I'm going to use for this? I'm going to use this color. Yeah, I'm going to use this color for this. Does not give him the color I want. Well, let's use this very color and use my shift down to darken it a little bit to just get something like this. I think I should increase this more. I've been increasing it severally. So let me just do that again. I think I should add more to it. And I have something like this. Awesome. So guys, what do you think about this design already? It's looking very interesting. I know you've learned a lot of things. So guys, without wasting much of your time, I don't want this video to be so lengthy. So what I can do next is I have some stroke behind. So what I did to achieve that stroke is by selecting a frame. So let's select a frame. I'm going to select a frame with the same size in a MacBook Pro. And what I can do is to pick my pen tool. So from one point of the frame to the other point of the frame. And use my escape tool. So I have one. So I try to make sure that I snap it at the right edge. So let's look at it. I think it snaps well. So you can edit it more by clicking here and select this and make sure you snap it to the edge. And zoom in, zoom out. Zoom out. Snap it too. Awesome. So when you're done snapping it, you can click on done. So for this vector, I'm going to duplicate it and shift it a little bit. So I have something like this. So I'm going to check the spacing within the both of them. I think I'm okay with the size. So one trick I did was to increase it. So, and also increase the down as well. So for this frame, you can select the frame. Here we have this. So this is the second vector. So you just carefully make sure the spacing matches with all edges. So once you're done, let me bring it down a little bit. So duplicate and set it to match as well. Think it's okay, duplicate, and amazing. Just keep duplicating and you have something like this. Good. So what I can do is to select the whole frame, the whole vectors, and you use my Command G on it. Let me duplicate it. I've duplicated that so I can drag it down a little bit rather than snapping it. So what I can do is to remove the fill color, and for the stroke color, so instead of black, I'm going to use this. Select this and try going to drag it into the design. So I've used my alignment tool here, centered and centered. Then this frame now, I'll call this frame background stroke. Then I'll set it. So one thing I do also is to rename my components, my layouts. So I can drag this down and it's behind. I think I should reduce this, so shift up arrow, so I'll reduce the stroke. So I think this work. Find a color that doesn't obstruct the whole designs you have and something that is still visible. So awesome. So the next thing I want to do now is add some shadows to this. I have a text which I need to add up here, so let me select this button, this text here, and paste this here. And in case someone wants to call, so call 551. This is not my number, just a random number. Guess some people want to use the number 9897. So I can reduce this color as well so that it doesn't outsmart this, and can add both of them into auto layout and set a center and make the spacing within them to be 32. Awesome. So I can set this to have an underline. So instead it's look like an underline. So it looks like something that is actually clickable. So I can select all of these and I'll try to move it up a little bit. And I think this is okay. And this. So one other thing I want to do is to add shadow behind these boxes. Sorry. Behind the buttons. So another way you can do that is just select the box and add your shadow. But I use one technique, which is awesome. So what I can do with this technique is to select the color, and this is inside the background stroke, so I'm going to remove that from the background stroke, and I'll set it behind the button. Sorry about that. So I'm finding it difficult putting this behind it. So what you can do is to remove the auto layout. I think that's what's causing it. So you drag this behind. So I think that shape is inside this background stroke. So I'm going to drag it out. This shape going to. So let me see if I can get this out. So I use my Ctrl X and paste it back. So I wanted it to go. Let me give this a different color so I know which is on top of which. So I want this to be at the back. Awesome. So I can take this at the back. And then I'll select this color. And I'll go to Effect and select layer blur, and then set this to be like say 300. So you can play around with this. You can see some kind of shadow being added to it already. So what you can do, I can just do, and I can make it 60, lighten the shadow. So I'm going to kind of drag it in a little bit so it doesn't outsmart other designs. So I'm going to copy this, and awesome, looks like a shadow already. You can bring this in a little bit and do what exactly fits for you. and this looks like a shadow already. So you can take control of your shadow using this technique. So I'm going to paste that here, inbuilt in here. So I'm going to remove the auto layer here so I can be able to paste this behind it. Make sure it goes in to the point I want to use it as a shadow. So that's another technique for adding shadow. This video is taking some time and I'm almost rounding up with this. So guys, if you really like what I'm doing, make sure you comment in the comment section by letting me know that you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any challenge with what has actually gone on here. And I think I should add some corner radius to this and make it more interesting. Good. So guys, let me know if you like this design, and also comment on the comment sections as well, telling me what you feel about the design. I think the last thing I need to add here, I was trying to be more creative. I added some kind of shapes here. So what I just selected the polygon and just dropped that here. And the size for the polygon, I think I used okay, what I can do now is to make it more intuitive, make it more stand out more. So I selected the curve tool, selected the bend tool, then I kind of reduced this in a little bit, and I did the same way for this as well. Make sure you select the bend tool, and I do this as well. I was trying to be more unique. So I can click here and we'll just make this 24. And I'll have something like this also in our design. So this background stroke has been giving me a lot of issues. So what I can do is to lock it so I don't have things inside that frame. So the next thing I did was to duplicate this. So I'll quickly duplicate this to the end. Awesome. So after duplicating, the next thing I did was to select colors from the already existing colors we have here. So you can randomly select colors. Now that's going to take some time. So guys, I'm done. So I'm going to select all of them and group them, and make sure I reduce the opacity for all of them. So I'm going to quickly do that for all of them. So reduce the opacity so that it doesn't distract the eyes from other design components. Fine. Awesome. So we have this. So the next thing I thought about was to duplicate this and have this to this point. So let me look at it again. So I have this to 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and have the other one to 5 columns as well. So let me turn off the grid. So I have something like this. Awesome. So I think this is more reduced, so I can increase it back to 80. I'll say, oh, make sure it's interesting. So you have to be more creative with your designs. So what I did next is to add some I want this stroke not to be visible on this part. So what I can do is to select the frame and look for the stroke background, remove the lock, and increase the frame to this point. So I don't have that here. So the next thing I can do is to add my icons for Facebook, Twitter, and the rest of that. So I'm going to right click and go to plugins and go to feather icons. So I'm going to select Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So I have all of that. So I'll select my YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the 4 of them, and log them and set them to like say 32, and I can change the color to this color. Awesome. Then I can add auto layout to them and set the auto layer this way and make it to like say 8 spacing, and I use my Ctrl X and use my Ctrl V, so just paste it in the frame and bring it in here. And I can increase the spacing as well to make it 16, and I'll just use my eyes to align it properly here in the middle. Awesome. So guys, so pretty nice and interesting, right? So one thing I did in this design is to do some kind of animations we guys saw. So I can change this color and make it this very color. And I'll do that as well. I think that's one of the colors we should have in this design. So I'm going to select this and change the black to the color. And also, I think I'm going to change this as well, the black. I'm going to change it to the color, make it more interesting. So the next thing I'm going to do, guys, is to add a kind of shows that you visited you on this current page. So that's very essential. So I can do that. So just do your alignment very well. So I'm going to remove the frame here on group so that I'll be able to do this very well. So I'm going to set it at this point and reduce it a little bit. Awesome, right? So we have my home selected away. So you can use the grid system to actually check if it's actually aligning very well. I'm not going to do that because of time. I don't want to bore you with this video. It's getting lengthy already. So awesome, right? So the next thing you can do for the shadow, I think I have some challenge with the shadow, but you go ahead and fix your shadow for this button. So the next thing I want us to do is to do some kind of animations. So what I can do is to select these 3 images and then group them. I'll call this image 1. So when I duplicate this, I'm going to use Smart Animate. So set this here. And now I want the images to rotate from this point to this point to this point. So what I can do is to swap them. So I know the sizes. So what I can do is to take this to this point. And first, let me start from the down swapping. So make sure it's here. Then I'll take this to this point. Then I'll take this down here. So guys, let's turn on the grid line to help us arrange. So that's how I started swapping. So for this, it's going to take from this point down to this point. And let's look at the height. The height is, let's just copy the height and just do that. Awesome. So for this, it's to this point. And we make sure, okay. Then this as well, we'll reduce it to this point. And what I can do is just check out the height 280 and make that 280 as well. So it looks like it has rotated. So what I can do is to make sure it matches with the previous one which I have there. So I can remove this, I think it's 2. Awesome. So this, I'm going to leave it at image 1 because I want to use auto animate on it. So I'm going to turn off this and I'm going to duplicate again. Use my command D to duplicate, and I have this. So you can as well rotate as well. So this now is going to the top. So this is going to the top here, and this is coming over here, and for this is coming over here as well. So let's turn on the grid line to help us arrange this very well. So for this, it's taking this point and to this point. Let's check out the height again. The height is 528. So let's just paste it here. And for this, the height is 280. So let's just do that and paste that here. So I'm going to take this to this point. So snaps well. Then this to this point. And then make sure it snaps to this column. So make sure you have the same sizes. That's the way you get the animation properly. So it's 2 spacing, 1, 2. Let's look at this. I think the same spacing, 2 spacing. So let's look from the top. Yeah, it's 2 spacing. So what you can do, make sure you snap this very, very well. And snap this very well. Make sure it matches the column very, very well. Like you could see this is going to give us an issue in the animation. I'm going to snap it very well, and that as well. So for this as well, snap it very well to the column, and then this same. Okay guys, so let's do the animation. So I'm going to turn off this grid systems and I'm going to turn them off. And what I can do for the animation is I want after a delay should go to this. So you can rename this to be artboard 1, and this should be artboard 2, and this should be artboard 3. So from this artboard 1, if you go to the prototype, so this should be the starting prototype, and we're going to add an interaction of after a delay. So after a delay of, let's say, 3000 milliseconds, you should navigate to artboard 2, and that should be done with Smart Animate and should be done in 300 milliseconds. So we're going to do that for this as well. So we're going to add an interaction, should be after a delay. So what we can do is just drag this to this point, and then it should be after delay. Why it's not picking up after delay? So let's check this very well. After delay, go to add to. Okay, what I can do is just copy this prototype and paste it here. Sorry, I think this prototype is on the background stroke. See, this background stroke is just giving me issues. So I can delete the prototype for that and lock up this background. Let me check out for lock up this background stroke. So I want the frame, not the background. So the frame, so add the interaction. Now we get after delay. Then it should happen after 300 milliseconds. Then it should navigate to the third one, and this should be Smart Animate and 300. Fine. So we can do that for this. Take it back to the first frame, and that should be after a delay. Okay, that should be after delay. Let's show that. See, we're selecting the background stroke. So I'm going to delete this and select the artboard and drag it to the first. And so it should be after a delay, and this should happen. Should navigate to artboard design 1 and Smart Animate after 300 milliseconds. So guys, let's go ahead and run this prototype, and let's see what we'll have. So I just quickly looked at it. It should work verifying, so you could see how the design looks, and very interesting. I did some little touch on it. Because of time, I'm not able to show you guys all of what I've done. So this is how I created this design with this great animation. If you really enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to this channel. So my next video is going to be on colors. Make sure you don't miss that video. Turn off notification bell so you get notified when I create a new video on this channel. So see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.